Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 17th of February. And joining me on this edition, Steve Withers.
Blogging is not writing, it's graffiti with punctuation.
Ed Selley.
It's figuring us out faster than we're figuring it out.
And Mark Botwright.
We're touching doorknobs, water fountains, and each other.
Welcome back to the podcast. It's still February, and AVForums is 20 years old. Did you know that? I don't think I've actually mentioned it this year, but it is our 20th birthday.
Which month?
Yeah, that's the thing.
January.
Really? Missed that one then.
So, there's no specific date actually that we can find. But
no, because I seem to remember there was a message from years ago that you're absolutely right. AVForums went live in January 2000. It then all went very spectacularly unlive a little bit later on in 2000.
It did,
wiping
yes.
every single original member.
It did, well remembered, because my original account was in there at some point.
So, in other words, what we probably ought to do is commemorate the second more successful attempt.
The second
we probably
rising.
know when that is, which I believe gives us until May. Possibly.
Yeah, there's plenty of things coming this year, plenty of things getting planned at the minute to obviously celebrate the fact that we've made it to 20 years, although I feel really, really old. But we're going to do stuff like we're going to go back over the years. So what was the big thing in 2000 when AVForums started, and is it still around now in terms of hardware and music and how we used to consume things? And 20 years is a long, long time.
I'm going to bet that there were various predictions for the end of physical media at particular points along those 20 years.
In 2001, I think there was, yeah.
Can I get early on into this? I would very much like to see, I don't care which one of you does which, but I would like to see proper hardcore testing of a 36-inch CRT. One of you can do Toshiba, one of you can do Panasonic. I don't care more than anything else because I just want to see you move them around.
I am thankful that we started reviewing TVs in 2005, which was at the end of CRT, where it was plasmas, and I'm not going to lie, it was really hard work with plasma TVs because they were extremely heavy. I don't know if anybody has tried to lift a Pioneer Kuro in their life with the stand attached.
That stand weighed a ton. I think that was made of a neutron star inside that bloody stand.
It was very stable though.
It was very
stable.
But when you had to get it off the TV rack to put something else in its place to review it, I used to hate, and it never got very far away from the TV rack because I'd managed to get it on the ground, but then I had to walk it across the ground.
Yeah,
it was a deadlift. Get it off of the shelf down onto the floor, and then remove the stand. And then hump the telly off to wherever you're going to dump it while you're doing something else. At least yours is all on one floor, Phil.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to be. It was going to be for a while. I'd have to hump that thing up the stairs into the spare bedroom.
There's an overuse of the word hump.
Yes, I was thinking that. Yeah.
However you want to get it there, Steve.
Whatever floats your boat.
But we've seen lots of technology. I mean, when I first joined, I still had my Laserdisc player. It was still a useful item in my system when AVForums first started, up until about 2006. No, it was about 2004 I got rid of it, and I went to DVD in 2000 as well. So Laserdisc was still part of my system, but on the way out back then.
How much would those laser discs be worth now?
Next to nothing.
They've gone. Oh, fair enough.
It depends. I mean, the Star Wars trilogy is quite expensive.
Yeah, the definitive edition. If you can get a mint edition of the definitive edition, I wish I never sold mine now because it was mint. They can. Yeah, they can get about £100. But everything else is next to nothing. What is expensive is Japanese players. If you can still get hold of the Japanese players with the wooden sides on them and so on, like the CLD, I think it was the CLD 9.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is still really quite expensive if you can get your hands on it.
And another object which generally costs far more than the player itself, if you are keen on bolting one into your present day multi-channel system, AC 3D modulators. They still command good money. But that's principally because they were never very common to start with, and 17 years odd down the line.
No, in this country, what happened was Pioneer actually built them into the players. So it was really
So
quite
did
useful.
Yamaha.
Yeah.
And Marantz did for a couple as well. The Yamaha ZX9, that was the last Yamaha AV receiver to have an unmodulated input. I don't know if anything did it any later than that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is sad.
We can save this for later in the year. We've got a whole year to celebrate 20 years of AV
to
Forums.
wallow in nostalgia.
Yeah,
I might
to get
do
on.
one. I mean, it's not a secret. Is it a secret? We will be, as you say, we'll be doing a series of articles. And I was thinking I could simply do one entitled Mini Disc. Why?
That was the one I wanted.
Loved Mini Disc.
That was the one I wanted you to do, Ed, because like Steve, I absolutely adored Mini Disc. I loved it. It was fantastic. I had a car head unit. I had one in the hi-fi system. I had one in my DJ system. I used it for creating proper mixtapes back in the day because you could edit while they were in the player and so on. Portable mini disc players. Oh, I love that format.
The portables were good. I mean, I would say it's the format to which I have spent the most money with now nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
See,
I mean, I dare say you Laserdisc types may have spent more. Sorry, Mark. I had nothing to show for it now.
I was just going to say I loved mini disc just because there was a particular period where you could get some really great kind of US comedy, like stand-up stuff on DVD, and you'd import like the early stuff from like Chris Rock and everything, and you could just use the optical out on the DVD player just to record it straight onto the mini disc.
Oh yeah, because it didn't recognise that the mini disc was a recorder. But there was some sort of hole in the Macrovision that it didn't understand that it was being encoded to A-track. So yeah, you could do bit perfect.
A hole in the Matrix. Was it not the Matrix? Did they not
that
used
had
to
them
have
as computer discs as well? Yes.
Yeah, and also the Strange Days. They were the discs they recorded people's, thoughts onto. I think they called them clips.
They always had a kind of strange that sci-fi future old feel to them, you know.
They really were. I mean, if you take a look, I mean, it's a marvel. I sort of got very disheartened. I had one of the ES Sony separate players, which had the tray mechanism rather than the ejector mechanism.
Ooh.
Which I spent a significant sum of money on, and it literally a piece of plastic that cost no more than 10p failed inside the mechanism. I mean, the door couldn't open anymore, and Sony's response was, "Well, you need a complete new mechanism," and then quoted me a number which looked like the phone number I'd contacted them to speak to. And that pretty much was the end of it. But some of the little playback only portables were pound for pound in terms of when you look at 128 meg MP3 players, which were sort of nascent at the time. They actually weren't giving too much away in size terms, and they didn't sound bad. But
okay,
yeah,
well, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Like I say, we've got all year to discuss this, Ed.
all right, fine. Well,
but mini disc
save
is
this for the summer when there's sod all going on.
But mini disc, I hope we do visit that at some point this year because it's fascinating format. I loved it to bits, and I do miss it, even though it's completely impractical these days. There was just something about it. For me, it worked. So anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Well done, Mark. Congratulations. We'll give you that one. We're talking about the Oscars. Mark was the only one that said Parasite would win. Well done.
Yeah.
Even
though I stuck a few quid on it now.
Yeah, you should have.
Well, you see, you could have said that 9 times out of 10 you'd have been wrong, but just this one time you got it right. It was just pitch perfect, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you've got to be right at some point.
Well, in this is the time that you were. I mean, have any of you? Don't ask me because, as you know, I don't watch films. But has any of us four actually seen it?
No, I was going to go.
I ordered the Blu-ray from the States last week, so actually watching it.
So that's a no. I was going to see it, and I've ordered the Blu-ray.
Well, I was going to see it, but then Storm Dennis turned up. It is Dennis this week, isn't it?
Yeah.
I see your hometown's flooded to buggery.
Again, for the second weekend in a row. I mean, I feel sorry for people. There's people losing their livelihoods and all sorts. It's not nice.
Has that guest house washed back?
No, it hasn't. But no, there's been more flooding over the weekend, and so yeah, it's not good in Hawick at the minute. And the irony is that the works were underway to start in the summer to put the flood defence systems in. They're spending, I think, about 15 million putting the flood defences in, but
the words stable, horse, door, and bolted spring tragically to mind.
Unfortunately, but these things take so long for the government to approve and all the rest of it, and then the groundwork still get done. And in the meantime, stuff like this tends to happen. So unfortunately, it's not good for them up there at the minute. So I don't think anybody's listening, but if they are, hopefully things are all right.
Yeah.
Hope you've got waterproof headphones on.
Well, that's the least of the things, isn't it? I have to say, I have always quite liked when, blustery weather, on the assumption that you're not being flooded, which isn't so much of a big thing around here. I have to say my enthusiasm for it is slightly dampened now. I'm living alone in my own mortgaged house. I mean, this morning I woke up and I could still hear it going 19 to a dozen. It's like, do I still have a garden? Yeah. For as long as I don't open the curtains and look outside, my garden exists in a state of, Schrodinger's garden. So I decided to ignore it until things died down. And I do still have a garden, so we're all right.
You'll always have a garden. You may not have a fence or a shed.
Yeah.
Or you may have more than you started out with.
Or it's somebody else's trampoline.
No, my fear is always the roof. And when you hear it creak or something crack, and you think, oh, I hope it's not going to go.
Yeah, see, where I am now, I've got a flat roof on one part of the house. And those, I've just always hated them because there's always going to be a leak at some point. It's just a case of when it happens, whether you've it's like pass the parcel in house film, will the roof need redoing? But I always find it's quite fun though, looking out in the garden and seeing which bits have flooded. Is that just me?
I don't have that.
How many acres have you got?
Not quite that much. I had to drain the water butt earlier on because that was brimmed, so I had to take the mop bucket, empty it down a bit, and drain it into the drain at the back right before it started to spill over. But that's about the worst of my weatherproofing sort of things. So
British water butts spend about 3/4 of their time overflowing.
Not on this watch, they don't. Because it's perilously close to the foundations of my house, so I don't want it pissing water into it. So, yes.
I think after the last 2 weeks, I really don't blame Meghan Markle for buggering off back to America because I wouldn't want to live here either, really, if I had the option to live somewhere else.
But they've gone to Canada where it's even worse, Steve.
It's nice in the summer. It's a bit chilly in the winter, though.
No. It's usually stiflingly hot. Depending on. So there's about 4 weeks a year, 2 running into summer, 2 running out, where it's climatically absolutely beautiful, but it's the other 48 which can be a bit dry.
They spend a lot of time in LA.
Well, I mean, I've got family that live in BC, British Columbia, and the winters are pretty tough, but the summers are really, really hot.
I wouldn't mind a harsh winter if I had the promise of a decent summer, but in this country, it's a crap winter followed by a crap summer. It really grinds you down eventually.
I believe the phrase you're looking for is maritime climate.
And that makes it sound fun.
Well, no, it's what it is. The whole idea is the UK avoids the worst excesses.
I think Reg Hunter summed it up best when he said that Britain, where you've got weather for poets.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Shall we do a podcast?
I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, competitions, please.
Okie dokie. You can win a copy of Boys in the Hood on 4K Ultra HD. You can win a copy of Judy on Blu-ray and a copy of Little Monsters on Blu-ray, and all 3 of those end on 25th of February. You can also win a copy of Bliss on Blu-ray. That one closes 26th. We've got a copy of Abominable on Blu-ray, a copy of The Peanut Butter Falcon on Blu-ray. That one ends 4th of March. I'm assuming that is a real title.
Apparently it's a very good film.
Yeah. We've got a copy
Shia
of
LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf, yes. A copy of Sons of Denmark on Blu-ray. That one also ends 4th of March. We've got a copy of The Son of the Sheikh on Blu-ray. That's 5th of March. And finally, a copy of Criterion's February titles. And you've got until the 11th of March, and that's also on Blu-ray. As ever, loads more competitions being added daily, so head over to avforums.com/competitions to enter even more. And all competitions are open to eligible AV Forums members resident in the UK.
Any previous winners?
Oh, yep, we have got a few. Little Sheepy won Pain and Glory on Blu-ray. Mark Orm won It Chapter 2 on Blu-ray, which comes with a copy of the book. Gen 8 won Big Little Lies Season 2 on DVD. And Happy Mand won our Christmas DVD TV shows bundle.
Happy Christmas.
The thing is, they're not very festive titles, are they?
No. How I Met Your Mother, Sons of Anarchy, The Handmaid's Tale. We'll laugh a minute at those. Actually, How I Met Your Mother is, the first few seasons at least were quite enjoyable. The Americans I've never seen, so I can't comment on that really. 6 seasons of The Americans, blimey.
There we go.
I'll to say that.
So, well done to our competition winners there. Thanks for going through that, Mark, and we'll be back in a sec with hardware. So, moving on to hardware news. First story is going to be pretty quick because we saw this at CES, but Samsung have done their European forum.
Which we didn't get invited to.
In Malta. I don't think anybody got invited to it, actually.
No one I know did.
But obviously, there's a reason for that. We saw everything at CES. They launched everything at CES.
We didn't see announce the 4K TVs, which they didn't announce it. And the soundbars. So you got the full lineup now, whereas before you only got cherry-picked bits and bobs at CES, didn't you?
Yeah, but I think we see them. When is it? March 19th.
March 19th.
Yeah, we're going to Paris to see them, but we're actually going to get to see them properly, aren't we? So technical details and all the rest of it.
Technical seminar, so yeah, it'd be quite in depth. Although to be fair, I've seen all this already.
Yeah. Yes, Steve. I mean, we saw most of this. Obviously, the 4K models we knew were coming. We didn't get to see them at CES, but you do have the 8K models, and they were announced in some detail for the European market because we weren't sure if we were getting the 900. We were definitely getting the Q800T, and we were definitely getting the 950 TS. There was some doubt about the 900, but it looks like we are getting that this year.
Yeah, we are. So 900, the 950 TS, that's the flagship. All bells and whistles, every feature you could possibly imagine, slim chassis, etc. One connect box, and then the Q900T and 800T basically drop various features, aren't as slim, and obviously have reduced numbers of dimming zones. Dimming zones. Hang on, dimming zones. And then on the 4K lineup, you could have probably guessed what they might be called based upon the last few years. So we've got the Q60T, the Q70T, the Q80T, the Q90T, and the Q95T, which I think, from memory, is the one with one connect box.
Yeah, there's only one.
They aren't using it as much as they were in previous years, which is a shame because I think it's a really good idea.
It is. It's a great idea, but obviously it's expensive because the 90, the 80, the 70, and the 60 don't have it. And the 60 and the 70 this year, although the 70 was direct lit last year, it's not this year from my understanding. It's edge lit.
No, 60 and 70 are edge lit. They're using their dual LED approach. So they've got LEDs down either side.
Yeah.
And I have to say, having seen demos of that, did you see demos of that?
No, they didn't have the 4K models at CES.
No, did they? No, they didn't. Having seen those demoed, they actually do look pretty good for edge lit TVs. So it's an interesting technology where they basically adjust they've got a row of, I think it's a row of red and a row of blue LEDs, and they adjust them accordingly. So, but it does actually do quite a good job of making the blacks look blacker.
Okay, so obviously we're looking forward to seeing these. The only downside I can see is the fact that obviously they've cut the number of dimming zones for the 4K models. Obviously they want to push the 8K models, and like we keep saying, it's a business, so they're going to come up with a business strategy for the year. This is their strategy that they're going with. So the 8K models will have the same dimming zones as the 2019 4K TVs. The 2020 4K TVs are going to have reduced dimming zones.
Yes, they will.
But they're going. Samsung say they will have an improved dimming algorithm attached to them, though. So it's going to be interesting to see if that actually works.
In fairness to Samsung, their local dimming algorithms are very good.
Yes.
Of all the manufacturers, I would say, I mean, and obviously they're one of the few that have really been still investing heavily in local dimming and LCD. But their local dimming is definitely superior to anything from, say, Sony, Panasonic, or particularly LG. So yeah, I mean, these are pretty good.
And one of the demos I really enjoyed at CES was the object tracking sound system that's on the TVs. Certainly the high-end 8K TVs, so you get the speakers and the objects get tracked around the screen and so on, but it doesn't support any of the immersive formats.
It's a bizarre decision on their part, and they've basically put height speakers into the TV, but they don't support Atmos, which is strange. I mean, you can pass Atmos back from the apps to an Atmos supporting receiver or soundbar, but it doesn't decode it within the TV. Now you might say, well, you're better off doing it through a soundbar or a receiver, which is probably true, but it's strange to go to all that effort And it works really well, the object tracking system.
Yeah, I mean, the demo I had was amazing. Yeah.
There's a thing called Q Symphony, which means you can use it in conjunction with a supporting Samsung soundbar, yes, which they also announced. There's the Q800T, the Q70T, and the Q60T, plus more lifestyle, less home cinema, more lifestyle-related S60T and S40T. Obviously, no pricing yet or even dates, so don't ask.
And Steve, do they have EARC on them?
They do, apparently.
Do we know this for sure?
Well, let's just put it this way: but if it's not in the website or on the box, don't take it as gospel.
Yeah.
But they did say that their plan for 2020s TVs and soundbars was to include EARC out of the box. But strangely, it seems to be nowhere in this press release.
Yeah, I'm just skimming through the press release as we speak. Just
doesn't mention it,
and it doesn't mention it at all.
Doesn't mention HDMI inputs either. I'm pretty sure only the 4K TVs will have HDMI 2.1.
When I was at CES, once the behind the scenes thing, and once they'd done the presentation and so on, I deliberately went to the 950 TS demo area because I thought, as the screens opened up and the room at the back opened up and everybody was rushing through, I thought everybody's going to go to micro LED. So I'm going to go over to the 8K screens and I'll get all my footage before everybody ends up there and so on. But as I worked my way around the stand, I got to micro LED and there was hardly anybody there. All the press were standing around a TV which is called the Cero or Cero.
Oh, yeah, the one that spins.
The one that spins. So you had all these YouTube channels and YouTubers and influencers and all the rest of it not interested in micro LED whatsoever. They're all standing at a TV that moves whichever way you rotate your phone from landscape to portrait. The TV will follow it and do it. Yeah. And seemingly it's selling by the bucket load in Korea.
They're really expensive as well. They are not cheap, but yeah, so, I'm not going to slag. It looks really cool in the video when you see it move, but because you just literally move your phone, as you move your phone in your hand, the TV will match the movement of the phone. And obviously, they're obviously catering to all people who do a lot of stuff on their phones and maybe film things in portrait, which really annoys me when people do that. You should film in landscape, for God's sake. I think the BBC and news channels have a policy now. If you don't send it in landscape mode, we're not using your footage.
This is a real old man yells at cloud.
But you see, this is when it just struck me, Ed. It was like, it was clear that this is not for my generation. This is completely alien. It's like, why? But it was getting all the attention. All the press was surrounding it. All the news stories coming out of that evening's presentation was this TV. It wasn't micro LED or 8K or anything else. It was this TV. And it was the first time in probably in my career doing this where I thought, oh.
Strange thing is, it's even new. It's been out in Korea. It came out in Korea last year.
And they're selling them by the bucket load. So, yeah. So anyway, that's Samsung. That's what they did at their forum. And like I say, myself and Steve are going to an event next month where we'll get all the technical details. We'll get to actually play about with stuff before it comes for review. And we'll be able to check all the questions that we have. We'll be able to ask them just before launch.
Yeah. We have a long list of questions.
Yeah, it's their just before launch event for everybody that gets the TVs for review and so on. It's like our last opportunity to have a talk with the engineers and so on, so we're looking forward to that. Right.
And you and I will be with Panasonic on Tuesday.
Yes, Panasonic on Tuesday. So
discuss that length next week.
We'll have that next week. We'll also have Ed's Bristol Show report next week, but we're going to have his preview in a sec, so we're going to come to that in a little bit. Before we do, sticking with Samsung, they've done a deal with Netflix, Steve. What's the deal with this?
Phil, basically, when Samsung were launching their new Galaxy smartphones, they were also announcing a partnership with Netflix, but a twofold partnership. Basically, one was to make Netflix content look as good as possible on their Galaxy devices, and also there will be bonus material available exclusively to Samsung mobile phone users, which is a worrying trend in two respects. One, I don't think you should be watching stuff on a phone. I think you should watch it on a 10-foot screen. But then we're coming back to the generational thing, aren't we? I know. There's an entire generation who have grown up watching content on phones.
At least the Samsung phones are 21:9, or some of them are. So at least,
yeah. So basically, I think it is recognizing the fact that a lot of people watch particularly things like streaming services, on their phone. And that is true. I mean, if you're on a plane or on a bus or on a train or anywhere where you're trying to kill time, you might watch stuff on your phone. And the idea was obviously that they were going to optimize the content to look as good as possible on their phones, which is fair enough, I guess. And the other thing is they'll be offering bonus content, be it like behind the scenes stuff and extra footage, things like that, which, again, I don't like things being done exclusively for one particular manufacturer. Remember when 3D launched? You couldn't get a hold of Avatar because it was exclusive to Panasonic. You had to go buy it on eBay for £100 a disc, which is what I did do.
Did you? I thought we were getting freebies from Panasonic. Why the hell did you go and do
that? You got a freebie from Panasonic and kept it. So yeah, I bought it on eBay. I think I paid £50 for it. But anyway, it was still quite a bit of dosh. But back then there was little content, and obviously it was the biggest film of all time, and a film made specifically for Blu-rays. Sorry, for 3D. So I'm not a big fan of having content to exclusive to a specific manufacturer. I think
fragmentation of it, isn't it?
Well, fragmentation of fragmentation at this point, isn't it? It's like a grenade or something going off.
It doesn't seem like it's going to be a huge amount, though. I mean, if they said exclusive series or something like that, but just bonus content, and it seems particularly geared towards just short little things that they're doing around shows and the like. Yeah,
there's no way Netflix are going to be offering their main stuff anywhere but on their service to everyone, because they need subscribers, and they're not going to do anything to. Yeah, exactly. So it's just a bit of it's a bit of marketing, isn't it? Really,
it's an interesting idea though, to try and make it almost like synonymous with their smart devices in a way, to almost as if like say it's almost streamlined, like with the idea, are they going to have baked in Bixby support and that kind of thing?
I guess possibly. But what makes? Sorry, Mark. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, that kind of thing, whether they can fit in any kind of little kind of USP that makes, if you're a heavy Netflix user, just slightly weights it more towards your next phone choice might be more likely to be a Samsung or something like that. In the same way that I guess some people might choose a TV on operating system or that kind of thing. It's just those small marginal kind of gains.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is not necessarily the Netflix deal, which is a big thing and it's going to get people talking, but it's upping of the compression. And changing to different formats, which I think is really quite important. And this is where we're going to notice a difference. So on a mobile phone, AV1's not going to make it that big a difference. But when you're talking about what we do, like you said, 10-foot screen, Steve, I know you stream your Netflix and watch it on a big screen like that. I do the same thing. And I've got to say the quality just gets better and better and better. And it's because they're implementing these new technology behind the scenes. They are upping the compression and the compression algorithms that they're using, so they're more efficient at what they're doing, far better than what the BBC are doing at the minute, and certainly miles ahead of Sky. It's one of the things I've really noticed after having Sky in for 2 months is the compression that they're using is terrible for some stuff, especially when you're blowing it up to 10-foot screens. And I'm talking about like the 4K boxes and supposedly watching something in UHD, and you've still got compression artifacts. So for me, if I'm taking anything from that story, it's that Netflix is working hard to improve the compression side of things, and that's got to be a big plus.
I'm surprised that they've partnered with Samsung, because Netflix obviously use Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, and I don't think Samsung's phones support either, or at least definitely not. I don't think they do. I don't think they support Dolby Vision. Definitely, maybe Dolby Atmos, but they definitely don't support Dolby Vision.
Yeah. It's maybe an irrelevancy, who knows. But anyway, that's the big stories, and it just so happens that both the stories were Samsung related. So moving on, we've got some reviews to go through and a preview. So let's go to the preview first, because Steve's been done quite a bit of talking, so we'll give him a break. So Ed, you're going to the Bristol Hi-Fi Show, and it's strange not calling it Bristol Sound and Vision. I'm still getting used to that.
Much more honest.
But yes, so I mean, looking forward to things. I mean, I had my doubts, but actually I think because it's a niche of a niche, it's actually going to do okay going forward.
Against all the odds, everything about the Bristol show shouldn't work, but it continues to sort of it's the bumblebee of the audio show world, insofar as it's in the wrong place. It's held at entirely the wrong time of year. and it's held in a venue which is just frankly quite bizarre. But it continues to be a launch show. Actually, new things get their worldwide first appearance in the Marriott Hotel K-Bot Circus, which never is in its own way quite bizarre. But nevertheless, there will be
K-Bot.
That's what I thought. It's not Kaboot.
Cabot
or Kaboot?
Cabot.
Well, but it's not even there, is it? Actually, I've got that wrong because it's the hotel. It's the Future Inn. Future Inn is behind. It's wherever. It's a no-mark concrete hellhole in Bristol, and it still has new release stuff. We know that Riga is going to have something new. It's going to be first UK showing. Admittedly, they have shown it at a show this weekend. Chord Electronics have got new stuff. PMC, we know they've got new stuff. So it's still worth going down the M4 to actually see what's going on, or in Steve's case, travelling 8 minutes or however far it actually is back to his house. It's been a hi-fi show for much, much longer than it's acknowledged it's a hi-fi show. So the rebranding wasn't some sort of catastrophic shift.
In all fairness, it started off as a hi-fi show and then merged in or became a sound and vision show. And at one point, it was a 50-50 split. It really was a really good mix of stuff. That's when you had Pioneer and Onkyo and everybody else that was there from the home cinema side. And then you had your traditional hi-fi brands. But I'm going back, that must be, 15 years?
Yep. I mean, that would be when I was exhibiting.
That's right,
I've done 17 Bristol shows, which is in its own way quite tragic. The thing is, it's organised by a dealer chain, so you can be justifiably upset at the shift, but nevertheless, it represents what's actually being sold through those dealers. And if you wanted a sad indictment of AV dying off as something which it's now the preserve of very specialist retailers and the internet. There's no middle ground. And this is just one tiny reflection of that wider process. So it's not something that has happened overnight. And because of that, it's moved back to stereo, and it's doing pretty well for itself. I mean, attendances seem to be relatively steady. It's a standing joke that we do see many of the same people, and I don't mean exhibitors. If you wander around, I see many of the same people I've seen for the last 17 years. Yeah. But nevertheless, it just continues to have a degree of traction, which at the moment isn't necessarily replicated in too many other UK events. So if you can make the journey down there, it's usually worth doing so.
It's a bit sad though that we don't have any other shows of that kind of significance in the UK. I mean, it has died off. I remember there used to be a show in London. It was quite a big show. Again, it was supported with What Hi-Fi and a few other publishers that run that, and it used to be quite a big show. I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but it was around the Hammersmith area, if I remember right, and I went to that a few years. I'm sure you were exhibiting it one time.
Yeah, I've done that. But the thing is, London isn't. It sounds. London is not actually a natural venue for these sort of things. I think part of the problem was the moment that the high-end show in Germany moved to its current digs in Munich, and you honestly couldn't design a better venue to be a hi-fi show, even if you started from a green field. There's nothing in the UK that can do what that venue does. So in terms of international clout, especially as CES has moved, isn't necessarily much of a hi-fi show either anymore. That's, if you like, that's a category killer. And okay, we'll wait to see what Brexit does to this, but at the moment it's not significantly more expensive to visit the Munich show for 2 days than it is to go to Bristol from most corners of the UK.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's the harsh truth of it.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be shows in Manchester. I'm sure it was the same group that
Practical. Practical.
Practical. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. To be honest, that was always my favourite show to exhibit at. Great crowd. It only went on for 2 days. It shouldn't matter, but it really did. And you had Manchester at your disposal when you were off out of hours. So
Yeah.
that was always a great show.
I went to a couple of those, and I thought it was a good show, but again, it just didn't bring in the money to pay for itself, unfortunately. So.
Well, it essentially Practical's efforts have been rolled into the if you like, it sort of furthered the Bristol show as well. So that's what's going on there. We don't know all of the things that are going to turn up. There is a show preview on the site, and the show guide itself is now an online version, so you can look at that ahead of time. You don't need to lug a physical copy around with you. I will say that there are certain brands and people going who have not been resident at the Bristol show for some time. So again, against logic and reason, not only is it continuing to exist, it's actually starting to get people back who previously abandoned it. So I'll be down there on the Friday and probably on the Saturday morning as well, whilst I hurriedly rush around and take photos of the things I missed on the Friday. I hope to have a show report up on the Sunday, and we'll be discussing it this time next week. It'll all be over bar the shouting by that point.
And we were talking about 20 years AVForums. AVForums used to do the Bristol show as well. I'm trying to remember which years we did it now, but it was around about, I think it was the 20th anniversary year, and we did it for about 3 or 4 years. We had the room at the top of the stairs above the reception area, by the lifts and just across from the bar, which was a good position, actually. And we did quite a few demos there that were quite ahead of their time at the time. So we did 3D TV when it was in its infancy, thanks to LG. They loaned us one of their 3D TVs, and we did that. And I'm trying to remember what else we did. We did 2 Pioneer Kuros. One playing
there was calibrated versus uncalibrated.
It was DVD against Blu-ray, actually, and it was amazing how many people, because the TVs were calibrated the same. It was amazing when we counted it up at the end that quite a few people couldn't pick out the Blu-ray version. Okay. I think it was the Matrix that we were playing for that, and then we did the calibration stuff as well, where we had a little box and we could show people differences and so on. So it used to be quite an enjoyable thing, and it used to be enjoyable to get in front of the not necessarily the AVForums crowd, but just a wider audience. It was really quite entertaining.
Sorry, I've always enjoyed. I'll make the bones about it. I've always enjoyed it as a show. As much as anything else, it's not terribly hard to get around. And provided that you essentially just if you are going as a normal person, especially on the Saturday, arrive into the main entrance. For the public entrance, head straight to the foyer, go up the stairs to the top of the show, and work down. And if you do that, you'll be laughing. You get to see most things. It's never unduly busy, and it works quite nicely. Whereas, even Munich is a fair old slog to get around the whole thing, especially if you try and do it in one day. Bristol is a manageable size, and you will see certain things at the same time as the world's press is seeing them, which is pretty unusual for a regional trade show.
Yep, so that's Bristol show. That's happening next weekend, and Ed will have his report for the podcast next weekend. Right. Okay, so that's the Bristol show. If you see Ed, you can go up, take a photograph with him, ask for...
annoy him a lot.
Ask for his signature. Not necessarily his autograph, but his signature. Just make sure it's on a blank check. You do all those things. But you'll know what Ed looks like. So... Okay, moving on, and we're going to finish up the hardware section with audio with a subwoofer from the guys over at SVS. They're certainly they're kicking it out the park at the minute in terms of new models and so on. There's been quite a few recently, and this is one of the smaller examples, Steve.
Yeah, well, what they've been doing, I think, largely is trickling down tech from the Ultra 16 series down into lower areas of the range. So last year we had the 3000 series. And now we've got the 2000 Pro series. So basically, it's a redesign of their very popular 2000 series, and comes in three versions. There's the SB2000 Pro sealed, the PB2000 Pro, which is the ported one, and also the PC 2000 Pro, which is a cylindrical one. So you've got options there depending on what you're looking for. Really, if you're looking for something sealed, a bit more musical, shall we say, smaller footprint, very compact, and the SB2000 Pro that I've just reviewed, right up your street. If you're looking for something with a hell of a lot more thump, then the ported sub is going to deliver plenty of low-end extension. And then if you're looking for that, but you also have an issue with space, then you can take a look at the cylindrical version. They come in premium ash black, which is basically a wood effect. That's 899 quid. Or you can get the piano black, gloss black version, which is 999 quid. There is also a gloss white version for the sealed unit only, although you have to order that specially. So just to make that clear. So yeah, I had the sealed version, which looks like you'd expect an SVS sub to look like. It's very well made. It's just a small black cube. I'm amazed they managed to cram a 12-inch driver, the amplification, electronics, connections, and everything else into a cube that's less than 15 inches square, or cubed rather. Sorry. And unlike the 3000 series, the one above it, it does not have that mesh metal grille. So one of the ways that they've cut costs is by going back to a plain black fabric grille, which personally I prefer. So that's actually a good thing in my book. One of the things they have brought down from the higher end to this sort of lower mid-range model is they include the remote app, which I think is a really great feature. And it's good to see it being introduced lower down the range, because basically, even though it's got what they call the intelligent control interface, ICI, which is basically just the backplate with some buttons for doing things like volume and phase and crossover, you can do everything from the remote app. It's just open the app up, and it works on iOS, Android, and Amazon devices, and just basically open it up, connects to the sub straight away. And then you can sit at the sweet spot and do everything you want to do from there, which is so much easier than kneeling over a sub, peering down the back and trying to fiddle around with knobs and stuff when you can't see what you're doing. And you have to go back to measure it or listen to it from the sweet spot and then come back again. Pain in the arse. This is really good. So another nice little feature they've introduced. It's got 550 watts of sledge digital amplification. That has peaks up to 1,500 watts. It can peak up to 1,500 watts. It's also got a DSP built in. They claim a frequency response of 19 hertz to 240, plus or minus 3 dB. I will say it certainly goes down pretty low. I'd say it rolls off at about 25 hertz, but it goes fairly deep. As I say, it's small and compact. It's very agile in terms of its performance, and I really liked it. I mean, I've always liked a nice little. I've had quite a lot of ported subs in for review, and they do go deep, but I find I prefer something that's a bit more nimble, a bit more subtle in its approach, and this is definitely that. If you want to use it with music, it works really well as well. So basically, if you're looking for something to go work with music and with movies, this is right up your street. And although £899, you can get cheaper than that. I think like the BK subs, are half the price. Obviously, you are getting some, it's a classy product, it's a polished product. And you're getting the little extras that SVS will throw in, plus all their expertise. And the remote app alone, I think, is worth the price of admission. So, I think it's highly recommended.
Why is it called 2000?
SB2000 Pro.
Yeah, why is it called 2000? What does
2 litres, isn't it?
It's 2 litres, is it?
No, it's actually, there's been a 2000 in the SVS.
There's been a 2000 range for a long time. It's their most popular model.
Right, but unlike other subwoofer manufacturers, it doesn't relate to any performance figures.
I don't think it's going nothing that I can work. I mean, like I say, it's 550 watts and 1,500 peak, so that doesn't work. I don't think it's 2 litres.
It's a 12. No, it's a 12-inch driver.
Yeah, it's a 12-inch driver, but that doesn't.
No, because that's 306 millimeters. So it's just a 2000.
I just think it's
maybe it's commemorating when AVForums started.
It is. It's a whole. But also the thing is, 2000 is a curiously permeable, durable number. It for so long it was indicative of the far future, and people find it very hard to let go of it.
Right.
There's the 1000, the 2000, the 3000 series in the range at the moment, so I guess it's just a numbering system.
So it's a bit like a GT350. It actually means nothing.
Yeah. except it's synonymous with it's an SVS number, so
okay.
It's fine.
So it'll be something silly like it's 2,000 feet between where it's built and the office or something like that, because that's where Shelby got his
2,000 miles between where it's built and the office, because they're built in China these days, aren't they?
Alright, so it'll be a bit further than that. Anyway, good stuff to reveal.
GT40 though was the 40 inches they had.
It was 40 inches.
I know this because I watched Ford versus Ferrari on Thursday night, and it is a fantastic film.
Yeah, so the GT350, it was 350 feet between his office and the production line, which was obviously the aircraft hangar, and the GT500 was just made up, completely made up. Yeah. It meant absolutely nothing.
And then there was the GT90 concept car, which was not 7 feet tall. It wasn't 90 inches. So, yeah. there you go. Meaningless numbers all round.
Yep, good stuff. Right, that's it for hardware. Back in a sec with film stuff. Okay, moving on to film stuff. I say film stuff because none of us managed to get out to the cinema to see anything other than Kaz, but Kaz is not here, so we don't have any film reviews this week. But it's half term this week, so I might actually get to the cinema because even though it's half term and there'll be loads of kids in the Metro Centre, there won't be in the screenings for Parasite and so on. So it should actually work in my favour to do that. So
yeah, you should have a cinema to yourself, I should imagine, if you're going to see Parasite.
Yeah, should do. So I think I'll get to see that this week. But anyway, we've got some films opening up. There's a few of them. We'll go through them all together. First one is Harrison Ford. So it's Han Solo and a Wookiee. There was that meme going around. It was a shot from this film. Basically, Harrison Ford is some kind of adventurer out in the wilds of Alaska or the Yukon, and he finds a dog, and it's about the dog.
Well, it's Call of the Wild. It's Jack London's kind of classic.
I saw the trailer for this. It looked fucking awful.
This is our movies expert, Ed Selley there. Yeah, the Call of the Wild. I guess if you've read the books and stuff, you know what it's all about. I haven't. I've got no idea, no interest in it. But like I say, it's half term, and this opens on the 19th. And it's got Harrison Ford and a dog, and Karen
Gillan.
Yeah.
So that's a good enough reason to see.
You'll be reviewing
I was going to say, you've managed to list 4 films that are coming out this week, and I don't think I've heard of any of them.
No, I hadn't heard of them either.
Actually, I've heard of Greed, but only because I read about it in the paper this morning. It's directed by Michael Winterbottom, written by Michael Winterbottom, and it stars his usual collaborator, Steve Coogan. I believe it's a satire on the world super rich. It's a thinly veiled version of Philip Green / cross with a bit of like Richard Branson and that kind of thing. But basically, it's a dig at the super rich. And I've got to say, actually, Michael Winterbottom does always make very interesting films, quite often with Steve Coogan, as I said. So that actually might be worth checking out at some point. But I'm more likely to be on a streaming service. I'm not going to traipse out in the wind and the rain to see that or any of the films on this list.
No. So next on the list, Mark, is
Like a Boss, which 1 hour 23 minutes. So it's welcome. Nice and short. Tells you most you need to know about it.
I did look at that very briefly, and because it's director Miguel Arteta. I thought for a moment it was directed by the Arsenal manager. But no, it's a different man. So it doesn't even have that going for it.
Yeah. Sounds like kind of standard light comedy fare. Stars Rose Byrne, Salma Hayek, and Lisa Kudrow. I've seen absolutely nothing on this, I'll be honest.
At least you haven't got the last one, which Ed has. So, Ed?
This is Little Joe, which synopsis in full. Alice, a single mother, is a dedicated senior plant breeder at a corporation engaged in developing new species. Against company policy, she takes one home as a gift for her teenage son, Joe. What's brilliant about this? It could either be a comedy or a horror.
I was going to say.
And I have no idea.
It says drama sci-fi is the description.
Oh, I didn't read that. Well, in that case, and that's the comedy angle closed off. So if you were looking for something light-hearted, then no. It's not a Little Shop of Horrors, is it? Who knows? It's got plants in it. It's got Emily Beecham, Ben Whisler, and Kerry Fox, which is great. And I know nothing about this either. I've seen no information about it at all.
I bet there will be an Amazon review for it. 1 star, worst comedy ever.
So, there you go. It's a stellar week at the cinema, as you can tell. Is there something big out there at the moment that is still hoovering up the...
No. I don't know what's going on at the moment. It's just a bit on the quiet side, cinema-wise.
There you go.
But I'm glad to see that the longest film on that list is Little Joe at 1 hour 45 minutes. So it makes a nice change to see films that are clocking in between an hour and 23 and an hour and 45 as opposed to sort of 2, 3, 4 hour long movies.
So what are we saying? They're shit, but they're short.
No, but I like a short film.
No, absolutely.
I mean, nice tight 90 minutes, job done, in and out, no mucking about, brilliant.
I was flicking through Sky Movies earlier on, Steve. You mentioned that, and it was Titanic on one of the channels, and it started at 4:55, and this was at 6:30, and it still has another hour to go.
Yeah. I think the ship sinks in real time. Doesn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
I watched, speaking of James Cameron, I watched The Terminator last week. Awesome. Hour and 40 minutes. Absolute stone cold classic. Just does everything perfectly. So that's what you want. You want
it's like Running Man. Running Man is 91 minutes. And there's not, just like Arnie, there's no fat on
ounce of fat on it.
So, yeah.
But as I did say at the start of this film section, I watched Le Mans 66 or Ford versus Ferrari, depending on where you are. I got it from the States, so my disc is Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah, it's because Americans don't know where Le Mans is.
Well, I mean, to be honest, that is I know that the end of the film takes place at Le Mans 66, but the film is essentially about Ford's battle. It's bizarre actually watching it because
it's
more so well made.
Ford, in fact.
Well, it's so well made, and you like the acting is so good, and the characters are so engaging that you kind of forget the fact that it's really, a big bully. It's a metaphor for the US, really, where there's a massive bullying conglomerate as he's taking on little, family-owned car company. And under any circumstances, Ford would be the villains of the piece. Well, they are the villains of the piece to a certain extent.
As a corporation, they are, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, actually,
it's a brilliant film too. It's a brilliant film, but my God, the photography in it is fantastic.
Yeah. I watched Joker last night on 4K Blu-ray. I succumbed. It was special offer on Amazon, so I bought the disc. It was out on Monday, and because I said watching it once was probably enough. But I watched it again. I watched it on the JVC N5, which has just come in this week for review as well. So I set that up quickly and sat down and watched it. And my God, what a beautiful looking film that is. Even though it is depressing and grey and cyan, and it looks tremendous. And the soundtrack is just phenomenal. That Atmos soundtrack, the direction on it, the effects. That I didn't really pick up on it when I saw it in the cinema, but in my own cinema room. Picking up, and it's just subtle little things like car doors opening behind you and that kind of thing, and amazing, really, really good.
I'd love to keep up this highbrowness, but actually, I watched Pacific Rim Uprising last night because I'd not got round to watching it until this point.
Not a great film.
No, that's a fair assessment. But
the only Pacific Rim looked like a masterpiece.
It does. The only thing I discovered as by accident that is that on Now TV, and therefore I'm assuming on the Sky On Demand as well, there's every episode of Roast Battle, the UK version of it. Now, a lot of the UK ones fall flat, but right at the start, season 1, the battle between Phil Wang and Ed Gamble, it's about 6 minutes long, and it's honestly one of the single funniest things ever committed to television. It has what is probably the single funniest comeback I've ever heard, and it's monumentally offensive. And as I'm, unlike Phil Wang, not an Asian man, I'm not even going to repeat it or spoil it. But it's on there until the end of the month. It's just worth it for that episode. First season, Phil Wang versus Ed Gamble. It's just unbelievable.
What's
it's so fun. It's Comedy Central. But I mean, if you go Now TV, it just crops up as one of the box sets.
Yeah.
But just that, it's just magnificent, just fantastically funny. And all of the episodes of Taskmaster on UK TV Play. So, I mean, obviously people are making all these recommendations about new television, but I mean, I ploughed through all my favourite Monster Week episodes on X-Files, and now I'm just rewatching bits of Taskmaster. Yeah. I'm making no progress to new television at all.
Well, you see, I haven't had Dave HD for a while, and Dave on Freeview's not worth watching. It's terrible. They're absolutely terrible. But now that I've got Sky, I can watch it on HD again. And I watched Hypothetical. I've never seen it before.
Some of that's very funny.
Oh, that was hilarious. I haven't laughed as much in a while at a TV program, comedy program. It was really entertaining.
I genuinely admire the fact that Dave has channeled we've got a budget of 11p. This is going to live or die on the people involved, and they've just found fantastic people. I mean, I rewatched the Taskmaster series with Bob Mortimer in it. I think it's season 5, and Christ almighty, that's just ridiculously funny. I mean, the last episode where he's going on about the part of the UK that pisses the most.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculously funny. I mean, it's the way that everyone else, the other participants and Greg Davis and the rest of it, all of them are just in bits. It's just fantastic, magnificent program. So, yeah. I'm worried what Channel 4 is going to do to the. I mean, I hope they're the people that now own Taskmaster. I hope they aren't going to piss about with it. And
I did a
Botwright
pretty good job
spend money
with
on it.
Bake Off, so I don't think.
yeah, no, I'm hoping it will go all right. But Taskmaster worked because it was done on a budget of 67p an episode, and I hope they don't piss about with that.
Don't give it any money.
No, absolutely.
No, you're still all sharing the same changing room.
Right, anyway, getting back to what we're talking about, which was discs, 4K discs. So releases this week. Gemini Man. I watched it on the plane, and it was at the right frame rate, which was 24 frames per second. Terrible film. It wasn't a very good film.
I saw it
at
in
all.
cinema. It's a terrible film. Well, it's a mediocre action film, but I've got the disc as well, and me and a mate were comparing the Blu-ray, which is obviously at 24 frames a second, with the 4K disc, which is at 60 frames a second. And clearly, with the higher frame rate, it just looks awful. It doesn't look like a film at all. It looks like watching videos. It's shockingly atrocious. But even at 24 frames a second, it's still awful because the lighting and the photography is appalling because they have to light everything so bright and so flat to shoot at that frame rate. There is no artistry in it whatsoever. It's like looking at, like a corporate video for...
and the thing is, the CG as well stands out even more when it's...
I was going to say, what does the frame rate have? How does that affect the kind of de-aging thing and everything?
Oh, well, there's a bit... I think it's the first chase, and he jumps up on top of he jumps up on top of a car, and you can tell it's a CG. It's not him doing the stunt. It's a CG character doing the stunt. It just takes you completely out of it.
But it's just photography. It's just appalling as well. It just doesn't look like a film. And I'm not just talking about the frame rate. I'm talking about lighting of a scene. There's an artistry. If you look at Ford versus Ferrari, because interestingly we watched that straight afterwards, and the difference is staggering. I mean, there's some shots in that. The bit when he's talking to his son about the perfect lap as the sun's setting over the
sitting on the runway,
absolutely fucking gorgeous.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful scene. I mean, but the photography adds to the emotion. The performances are brilliant. The whole scene is instrumental in explaining the very nature of the man. But they do it in a beautifully artful way, and that's what the cinema's about. It's not just about frame rates. It's about how something looks. And that kind of stuff is just none of that was there in Gemini Man. It's just a mediocre film using technology for the technology's sake and not doing it very well. It looks like watching a cheap soap opera on TV because that's how they light them on. Because they use multiple camera setups. They have to light everything flat and bright because they're shooting from different angles simultaneously. Whereas most feature films will be shot single camera, so you light for that one direction. And you can light it artfully. You can have shadows. You can, do various things. Whereas if you're shooting at high frame rate, you have to flood the set with light, or even shooting outdoors, you've got to flood everything with light. So everything's brightly lit and it looks like the kind of stuff we normally are used to seeing. When we go to shows, Phil, and they've got all the manufacturer-produced demo material to sort of show off their TVs. That's what it looks like basically, and it's not a film.
Okay. Also coming out in 4K this week.
Maleficent Mistress of Evil, which I have not seen, but I believe Kaz is in the process of reviewing. Okay,
so the review will be up on the site. Gemini Man already up there on the site.
Yeah, Simon did it.
Yeah, he did that one. Simon did that. Blu-ray releases 9 out this week, which is
unusual. Is there not a film called Nout coming
out? No.
Another Ken Loach.
Followed by Brassic.
No, that was just me being clever. There is nothing out on there's Nout out on Blu-ray this week. And then TV and streaming releases. Amazon Hunters season 1. I know nothing about this.
It's about Nazi hunters with Al Pacino.
Al Pacino hunting Nazis. Yeah. That's all you need to know.
I'm up for that.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's not set in the present day because it's quite easy now. They don't move very fast.
Well, I was going to say Al Pacino doesn't move very fast. I still watch it.
It's a suspense drama. A very old man chasing an even older man.
The longest chase sequence in cinema history.
But anyway, you want to see Nazis being hunted? There you go. Got Amazon.
I do. I'm up for that. Sounds good. And I just discovered Timeless, which is only ran for 2 seasons, but I'm really enjoying it on Netflix. It's about it's about time travel. I love a good time travel series, so check it out.
Okay, good stuff. So to end the world and end it on a cheery note, what are our favourite world-ending pandemic apocalypse movies, and I think we've got quite a lot to talk about. And I know what Ed's going to mention straight away because he'll be thinking in terms of soundtrack, and there is one of them that's got an absolutely fantastic electronic soundtrack. Not by electronic, by the way.
No, we quoted it as the start. I mean, that's a great one. We'll come to that in a bit, though. But there are, weirdly, for reasons I can't adequately explain, I watched The Omega Man not that long ago. I'd forgotten that's actually...
I was going to mention that when I saw Gemini Man, and every time I see Gemini Man written down, I think of Omega Man. I liked it.
Yeah,
I really did.
Hang on. When did you last see it, Mark?
All right, it might be tinged.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I bought the Blu-ray, I started watching it, and it's like the campest film I think I've ever seen. Short of having Larry Grayson come in and say, shut that door, it couldn't be much more campy if it's tried. It's unbelievable. And, when you compare it to, say, I Am Legend, which is based on the same story, or even The Last Man on the Earth, which is the Vincent Price original adaptation of I Am Legend, this one's it's a bizarre film. It really is. With a flamboyant performance from Charlton Heston, I have to say.
I mean, that's made all the better by just how heroically straight Charlton Heston was supposed to be. So,
well, yeah, because if you've heard the story about Ben-Hur,
no.
Basically, when they were shooting Ben-Hur, the director, William Wyler, said to Stephen Boyd, who plays Ben-Hur's best friend, who's a Roman, he says to him, listen, I'm not going to tell Chuck this, but you play it like this. You and Ben-Hur, when you were younger, when you were teenagers, you had a sexual relationship. You still want him, but he's kind of denied that aspect of his personality and doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. And when you watch the film now, it's so obvious. Every time Stephen Boyd looks at him, he's like this leering look of, I'm going to have you at any second. And Chuck is oblivious to this. It's the best bit of subtext anyone's ever put into a performance in a film before. And next time you watch Ben-Hur, watch it thinking that, and then the whole film changes.
Talking about erotic,
I digress.
You mentioned I Am Legend. What a beginning of a film! What a soundtrack!
You're driving a Mustang at the beginning of that.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Thought you might be getting onto that.
Shelby GT500. That supercharger whine as he's racing through an empty New York and it's bouncing off the buildings and everything. Oh, that absolutely.
Has he got his magic petrol, which doesn't go?
Yeah. You've mentioned this. Yeah, let's know, spoil things.
I'm not going to rain on it. Yeah. I would also like to, before we actually get on to good pandemic films, I'd like to give an honourable mention for the Andromeda Strain, which is not a good film at all, but it is where the snippet at the start of Ain't Talking About Dub by Apollo 440 comes from, where they say, let's go back to the rock and see it at 440 comes from. And when I actually watched the film, that was many years ago when I was chemically inconvenienced, and it was probably one of the greatest eureka moments of my entire life. So there's that. I don't remember anything else about the film. I think it had an asteroid in it. And that's about as far as it goes.
Satellite comes back to Earth with a virus on it.
Oh, right. That shows you
how
attention I was paying.
But quite enjoying when I was a kid, but it is slow.
Yeah, well, there you go. But no, I think actually modern ones have been rather better for it. I mean, we've been tiptoeing around it. Contagion, let's leave the soundtrack to one side for a moment because Clint Martinez has done many great soundtracks. Contagion is a bloody good film. And anyone,
I've ever seen it.
This puts me in an awkward position, Mark.
I think I have seen it. Yeah.
Any film that elects to kill Gwyneth Paltrow in 20 minutes,
first 5,
I'll add it to my list.
Minutes.
And then fill her head with goo.
Saw off the top of her head, have a good old look inside. No, I actually, before Phil suggested this, but by strange coincidence, I decided to have a virus double bill last week, and I watched Outbreak followed by Contagion. And Outbreak is very much the Hollywood view of a pandemic, with Dustin Hoffman flying around in a helicopter and Cuba Gooding Jr. trying to save the world and all this sort of stuff. They're going to firebomb an entire town to stop the spread and this sort of stuff. It's fun, but bollocks. Contagion is infinitely more frightening, infinitely more gripping by being so incredibly realistic and accurate, both medically and in terms of how a pandemic would spread and the impact it would have on society. It's an amazing film, and watching it, you kind of think like, I mean, obviously this whole current pandemic is neither here nor there really. terms of
Famous
numbers.
last words.
Yeah, I might be regretting this in a week. But watching, there will be eventually a pandemic where the contagion rates are much higher and where the death toll is much higher. And when you watch Contagion, it's scary. It's genuinely scary. I think this.
Well, you just have to go back to 1919 and the Spanish flu.
And
the thing was,
more people died of that than did World War One.
Yeah, but the thing was, we didn't have international travel back then. You didn't have airplanes taking off and landing every 5 minutes, traveling the world.
You're looking at something happening pretty much at the same point everywhere, which is tremendous. I mean, I would say, just a footnote. I've felt that Jude Law has coasted through things, just sort of looking quite handsome. But is he not a proper arsehole in that one? He really does.
Dick. They really nailed the internet in that one. That kind of someone stirring the shit. I mean, actually, do you know what? It was made in 2011, but his character in particular seems all the more prescient now. Where you are dealing in the post-2016 age of, fake news. That was what they were dealing with in that film with his character, but it really came to fruition a few years later. At the time, you're just thinking, like, what a dickhead, is his character really necessary? Actually, now his character is vital, because that would be what would be happening. But back then, they didn't even have the level of social media that we have now. And I think, it's infinitely worse than it was in 2011. So, yeah, his character, and you forget sometimes he's actually a really good actor.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to throw in a nod. One of my favourite guilty pleasure films, because it's not good, but I do enjoy watching it, is The Cassandra Crossing, which is an isolated little diseasey thing where, they're like, we don't know how to solve this problem. We're just going to make them die by driving a train over a bridge. Sorry, spoilers. For a film that was released in 1976. So, if you haven't got around to watching it until now, more for you. I thoroughly enjoy that film. I think it's most entertaining. So,
okay. I haven't heard from Mark. Mark, what are your suggestions here? And it doesn't have to be pandemic. It can be any apocalyptic end of the world, whatever.
Well, I think we've had this kind of discussion before about where do we draw the line with what's an apocalyptic film and what's post-apocalyptic. But in general, I do like the general tone of something like Sunshine, just the kind of crushing inevitability of it all.
But also it's got Mark Strong in it. I mean, even when he's deformed, he's still gorgeous.
He's brilliant in everything.
Children of Men, similar.
It's a great film.
I like the for once a slightly different kind of Contagion, because just in general, it's kind of hard to make just the spread of disease it usually turns into something like the Crazies, where it's zombifying people or something odd like that is happening. So it's nice to have something that has a little bit of a different twist that in essence we're just kind of dying out and that's it.
I think the whole zombie thing's it's gone too far now.
Overplayed.
Really? It's really overplayed.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realise how often they use viruses as the basis for the plot. It's like 28 Weeks Later, World War Z, Resident Evil, of course, which is all based upon the idea of a contagion and a pandemic.
Yeah. One of the best out there, I think, is Marky Mark in The Happening, where trees.
My God! The only thing that makes that vaguely worthwhile is the sequence with the bloke and the lawnmower. It's not supposed to be hilarious, but it's just absolutely. It's the sort of thing that Chris Morris would go, How do I make this? There we go.
That was someone who's seen like the first few minutes of Casualty and said we could stretch this over a film.
The thing is, I mean, like you say, you're not supposed to laugh at it, but I had it so entertaining because you're laughing at just everything all the way through. That is so bad, such a bad film.
I mean, I know I've got a lot of crap in my collection, but I actually threw that out. Threw it in the bin. I thought, no, I'm never ever going to watch that again.
Could you not use
that?
It as
is
a
the harshest criticism I've ever heard. Withers threw this
Put that
away.
on the poster.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, there was another one similar to that. No, it wasn't similar to that. It was aliens coming to save us, wasn't it? And the Knowing, was it Knowing or Nicolas Cage in that?
No.
Oh God, I remember that. It does have that. It does have that fantastic plane crash sequence.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, goes downhill pretty rapidly.
It does, yeah, it does.
I'm not saying it was a good film. It just has a really good plane crash sequence.
There's certain things you just can't do anymore. At the end of a film, it's like, oh, it's aliens. It was all a dream.
I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens.
But it was aliens.
Well, but like you said, it started so well, and it had me gripped from the start, and then right downhill.
Speaking of viruses and ancient aliens, isn't that what when we went to CES 2 years ago? Yeah, it was not last year.
We were watching Ancient Aliens.
I was sick as a dog. Well, you were sick as well, Phil. I spent a large part of 2 nights where I was so ill, just lying on the bed watching Ancient Aliens episode after episode after episode.
Because I'm sure that was bound to make you feel better.
Took my mind off it.
Yeah, well, there you go.
There's something about his hairstyle that's just hypnotising, isn't it?
No, it's just that every episode is exactly the same. It starts off with an interesting idea. They bring forward some, genuine scientists to, give you the real basic facts behind the thing, and then about halfway through, suddenly it's
record scratch, and it's like off down conspiracy theory.
What I loved best was that where they were talking about pyramids, and there was, there are different cultures have built pyramids that have been separated by continent, by oceans, and have never met each other. But the pyramids are clearly something that's been in human culture for thousands of years, and they've similar designs. And they're going on about it. Oh, that's interesting. And then basically one guy went, just like the ones on Mars. It's like a massive left turn in the middle of a sentence. You're like, hang on a minute, what? So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing again.
Well, there's one that flips it on its head. I think it's like NASA's Unexplained Files or something. And it does the opposite, Steve. So it starts out like a conspiracy that it's UFOs, and then it gives you the scientific answer at the end. So that's actually quite entertaining. Yeah.
Actually, Steve, you're the space buff. I learned something randomly today whilst I was looking for something else. Another piece of information. Did you know that the Russian Salyut space station was armed?
I did not know it was armed with what?
A 23mm vacuum-capable cannon.
Who were they going to shoot it at?
This is an interesting question. It's not satisfactorily answered, but it's the only manned armed spacecraft that humanity's ever built. 72.
Wasn't there already a treaty about not having weapons in space at that point?
I'm prepared to take your word for it. It didn't stop the bastards arming.
Perhaps the Russians thought if they had an asteroid coming towards it, they could shoot at it or something.
What, with a 23mm cannon?
I don't know. I mean, they had them they had machine guns on the drilling platforms in Armageddon. So Michael Bay felt it was
Professor Michael Bay. Yeah.
Hey, Moonraker's coming true. The Space Marines now exist.
Space Force.
Did you see the design for the badge?
Oh yeah, it's straight out of Star Trek, wasn't it? No, they can't actually get into space, which I find slightly ironic. But they've got a space force. They're all good. Excellent. Can I just put in my favourite virus related Doomsday? I love Doomsday. I know it's the one that it's the one that wears its influences on its sleeve. So basically, if you take Escape from New York and Mad Max and mix them together and set it in England, but basically,
yes, I forgot
where Hadrian's Wall used to be, and Scotland's been infected, and they've just built a huge wall and left them to their own devices, and they have to go in to across the wall into Scotland to go and rescue somebody, and it's basically Escape from New York with a bit of Mad Max thrown in, Mad Max 2 specifically. But I love it. I absolutely love it. It makes no bones about being it's as dumb as they come. It knows it. It doesn't try and be anything other than that, and it just delivers the goods on every level. And I love Doomsday, so that's my favourite.
Well, there you go. I mean, I have to say, on a day like this, it's not when the weather's closed in like this, you have to watch The Day After Tomorrow.
I knew this was coming. I was just waiting on you mentioning this.
Well, but it's true though. What better film to watch when the weather is really gash outside than Day After Tomorrow? It's why The Day After Tomorrow is a comprehensively, consistently rewatchable film when it's no better than 2012.
Well, you see,
2012 is absolute gash.
It is, yeah. Now you see the scene in there where they're running away from obviously they've got the surge coming in off at New York, and it's coming through the skyscrapers and it's heading for them at the public library. And I always assumed that how could they possibly get into the library and it be below the water level? It didn't make any sense until last year. Me and Steve were stood at the library in New York and we looked down towards it, and it is on a hill.
It's on a hill.
It's
a good place to go if you're flooding New York.
Yeah, but you don't realise that. So when you actually go to the Empire State Building, you're walking down the hill because the Empire State Building's actually in a dip. And I just always assumed that Manhattan Island was flat. Just assumed that was the case. Because you hear about, obviously, reclamation, how they claim back the land and all the rest of it. I just assumed that was because it was flat. It's not. Yeah,
lots of where the World Trade Center is reclaimed land, isn't it? Because we were down in the sub areas, and you could see where they had a big wall basically holding back the Hudson.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I mean, there's a few others that you could have gone into. Stuff. Does anybody remember The Day After from the 80s?
Oh, you mean talking about? Yeah, yes. That was the. Oh no. Well, if you want to go nuclear holocaust, Threads is the grimmest 2 hours I have ever experienced, and I say you watch that film and you come away from it and it will scare you to death. When I saw that I think it was 83, 84, whatever, it was on TV. I mean, I was teenager. It shit me up. Nothing. It is the grimmest nuclear holocaust film ever made. Utterly grim from beginning to end, and it doesn't let you off the hook once, and it is shocking and terrifying.
Was that UK made Threads?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, because
you can buy it on Blu-ray. Actually, I've got the Blu-ray, but I haven't had the guts to watch it yet because it's such a grim 2 hours. I've got around to it.
Yeah, it's the one I'm thinking about. The Day After, that was an American
one.
Yeah,
with Jason Robards.
Yeah.
Apparently, though, the broadcast of that film, The Day After, was one of the reasons why Reagan started pursuing denuclearization with the Russians. He was shocked and terrified. So I guess because he was an ex-actor. And grew up in the movie business, that it took a film to change his mind. But he basically it was one of the main reasons why he began to pursue a policy of détente with the Russians.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Whereas in England, we just gave us all the shits, basically terrified us.
the lasting image,
except for Thatcher, it wouldn't bother her.
Have we missed anything obvious, Mark?
Not that I can think of.
No. I mean, it's interesting because in a cultural sense, because obviously disaster films are mirrors of the time in which they're made. So, I mean, nuclear holocaust has sort of passed, ironically, despite the fact that actually the dangers of someone loosing off a nuclear weapon singular are higher now than probably at any time since the inception of nuclear weapons. Nuclear holocaust has fallen by the wayside. We're much bigger into viruses and illnesses now. We went through the asteroid phase. I think Michael Bay managed to kill that.
The trouble is, we go through the asteroid phase a bit like we go through the volcano phase when it gets hyped up that we're so overdue for one that it should be any minute now. And then when it doesn't happen within a few years, we kind of go, oh, well, we're probably safe then.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. Yeah. I mean, Yellowstone.
Super volcano that's blow up at any day.
Well, this is what happened with the tourists in what was it? Was it in New Zealand?
Yeah,
volcano
in miniature.
Just they got so people got so complacent that but it hasn't happened. Like you're going to get a 3-minute warning or something. Just it went off.
Do you want to go and visit an active volcano? Sign this disclaimer. No thanks. I think I'm okay.
And then Anak Krakatoa is beginning to look a bit lively as well, because I mean that went so well last time. So yeah, I mean all manner of exciting possibilities in which we become a footnote in history. And actually, this is probably the largest audience I speak to on a regular basis. So here's a question: I was idly wondering this for different reasons. If humanity was wiped out in an extinction level event, if Earth was being archaeologically excavated 65 million years from now, in the same way that we potter around looking for dinosaur specimens. So same rules of geological movement and so on and so forth from this point. Is there anything we make or have made which is robust enough to point to there being the presence of an advanced civil, or relatively advanced, we kid ourselves, but, a civilization 65 million years hence? I mean, I'm assuming they'll probably dig up a Toyota Hilux.
Well, I was going to say either a Hilux or a Soviet period ladder.
Well, but I mean, it's a serious question. Is there anything we make or have built that looks that is would survive in I'm not suggesting intact, but would be still recognisably not a natural phenomenon 65 million years hence? I mean, I know it's a bit of an open-ended question because kind of not testable in nature.
With all that plastic we got knocking around, will that still be around?
I was going to say a Super Nintendo cartridge, I'm fairly sure.
Well, that landfill full of ET games.
Yeah.
Still be there.
That isn't proof of intelligent life, though, Steve.
No, not really. No, you're right.
I mean, I was thinking certain bunkers and buried installations, they probably would collapse and geologically shift, but you might encounter something like a completely flat, reinforced concrete wall.
It would have to be something like that, because if you think back to what we have now still around that is ancient to us, you're looking at things like pyramids.
Yeah,
they're made out of rock.
6,000 years old.
Yeah.
And that's that's not in it for 65 million
but
years.
What we build these days is not going to last very long.
Wouldn't last more. I think I was reading an article about what would happen in the event of wiping out mankind. 20 years, 30 years, most of the stuff starts to fall apart.
Because it's not even the case. I mean, even if we disappeared and every single, we disappeared like, Thanos style, click of a finger. Even if then every single operating nuclear reactor melted down and was far, far worse than Chernobyl, after 65 million years, you wouldn't have any clue of that at all. No. In terms of half-lives and all the rest of it.
All be gone.
So if anyone does have any ideas to this, I'm all ears. Even
Speaking about that kind of thing and finding stuff from past eras, my last suggestion for apocalyptic movie, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, because that is both post-apocalyptic and apocalyptic. Because it's already happened once, and then they're figuring, well, we'll go again then, So
I always loved that film for having the courage to blow up the Earth at the end.
Yes,
exactly. If that was being remade today, he would have hit the switch to turn it off or something, wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. They would have saved it at the last minute, but no, they blew up the Earth on the end of that film. Obviously, the end of Strangelove, blow up the planet, and what else? Anything else playing? Oh, I suppose I always like, though it's not a great film, Terminator 3. I always admired having the balls to actually have Judgment Day at the end.
Yeah, this is true. And actually, weirdly,
is that the one with Claire Danes?
Yes.
Yeah. Weirdly pretty, with the little missiles arcing up from the field.
It's almost if all they need is Vera Lynn singing "We'll Meet Again" at the end, it'd be a perfect ending.
Well, there you go. Well, on that cheerful bombshell,
literal. Right. Okay, that's it for this week. I forget who's on the podcast. My thanks to Steve.
It's a bad day to be a rhesus monkey.
Ed.
Stop touching your face, Dave.
And Mark.
My arm.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmarkavforums.com for latest reviews, news and videos, plus why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. Also, head over and check out our YouTube channel for videos of the latest product launches and reviews, and there's a few of those going up in the next week or so, so feel free to subscribe while you're there. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.